show 2 minutes. Okay, when I show 2 minutes. Okay, when I show 2 minutes. One minute. Good morning, Director Risby. We do see you on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
Thank you. 1 minute. Good morning, Director Risby. We do see you on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
Thank you. 1 minute. Good morning, Director Risby. We do see you on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
Thank you. 1 minute.
Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
Good morning, Director Risby.
I do have
We see you
9:30.
on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
1 minute.
Oh. Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
Good morning, Director Risby.
I do have
We see you
9:30.
on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
It's the delay. It's the delay.
Something.
Oh. Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
Good morning, Director Risby.
I do
We
have
see you
9:30.
on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
It's the delay. It's the delay.
Something.
Oh. Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
Good morning, Director Risby.
I do have
We see you
9:30.
on the Zoom.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
It's the delay. It's the delay.
Something.
Oh. Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
Good morning, Director Risby.
I do have 9:30. We need just a minute.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
It's the delay. It's the delay.
Something.
Oh. Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
I do have 9:30. We need just a minute.
Good morning, Tammy. I will be there in a minute.
It's the delay. It's the delay.
Something.
Oh. Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
I do have 9:30. Correct. We need just a minute. Correct. Okay. We can.
It's the delay.
Just right there.
Wait, you're saying Director Risby is loopy?
Correct. We need just a minute. Correct. Okay. We can. Just right there. Testing. Correct. We need just a minute. Correct. Okay. We can. I think we're good. Just right there. Let's go ahead and start. Testing.
Good morning, everyone. I will call to order the regular meeting of the Western Municipal Water District Board. Tammy, would you please conduct a roll call?
Let's go ahead and start.
Thank you. Good morning. Director Torres. Here. Director
Good morning,
Dinstead.
everyone.
Present. Good
I will
morning.
call
Director
to order
Roden.
the
Here.
regular meeting of
Director
the
Risby.
Western Municipal Water
President
District
Gardner.
Board. I am here.
Thank you. Good morning.
Tammy, would you please conduct a roll call?
You do have a quorum.
Thank you.
Good morning. Director Torres.
Yeah, it's still audio feedback.
watching online, we're having some technical difficulties with the audio system, so we're gonna pause for a bit and see if we can get that fixed. Thank you.
Good morning. Director Torres.
Yeah, it's still audio feedback.
Here. We're gonna hold Director Dinstead.
Present.
For anyone watching online, we're having some technical difficulties with the audio system, so we're gonna pause for a bit and see if we can get that fixed. Thank you.
Good morning.
I'm fine.
Director Torres.
Yeah, it's still audio feedback.
Here. We're gonna hold Director Dinstead.
Present.
For anyone watching online, we're having some technical difficulties with the audio system, so we're gonna pause for a bit and see if we can get that fixed. Thank you.
Good morning.
I'm fine.
Director Torres. Here. We're gonna hold Director Dinstead.
Present.
For anyone watching online, we're having
Sarah is waiting. Sarah's turn today.
Testing audio. Let's proceed. Let's proceed.
Okay, apologies.
We did.
Yes. So apologies for the audio challenges. We had a loop feedback, and we think we've cured that now, so we'll move on with the meeting. Our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance, which today will be led by Sarah McDonald.
Good morning, board members, staff. As introduced, I'm Sarah McDonald. I'm Assistant General Manager here. Have had the pleasure of serving under auspices of the Board of Directors and directed by the General Manager for the past 4.5 years. Since we're already standing, if you would please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Brings us to the time for public comments. Tammy, do we have anyone in the room who wishes to speak or anyone online?
President Gardner, I do have one individual in the room who has requested to speak. I did receive one public comment this morning after the deadline, so I will present that at the following meeting. This time I'll call John Farnsworth.
Okay. Mr. Farnsworth, welcome.
I'm frustrated with this board and this community. 5 weeks ago, I requested information regarding the FY23 underrun and an understanding of how new construction projects requiring new water hookups are reviewed and approved in these times where those of us who are existing customers are feeling restrictions in our water usage. I also advised this council that I was unable to submit meeting agenda comments through your portal. To date, I received a letter from Kevin. I don't see Kevin today, but thank you, Kevin. He did send me a letter trying to explain the underrun. He did explain where and why the underruns occur. He still did not explain, to my satisfaction, why underruns cannot be applied as offset to future budgets, saving those who pay their water bills each and every month to receive a reduction in their rates. I also received a meeting date from Mr. Barr that we scheduled for last Friday. I canceled that meeting because it did not include my elected representative in the meeting notice. I think that my representative needs to be aware of what we are talking about, concerned about, mine and the neighborhood. As of this morning, that was slightly altered where your secretary, Ms. Ford, did advise me that maybe next Monday after next might be a good time to come in and have that meeting. So I'll take back my comments that it took a week to get to this point, but it also took 5 weeks to get to this point. Regarding access to the WMWB web portal, a week has elapsed and I'm still unable to get onto your website to submit comments for this agenda meeting. Again, I was unable to. Now, I have a printout of a screenshot of that page, so I don't understand why that has not been addressed. I'm going to give Ms. Ford a copy of the screenshot that I took this morning, showing again there was no access to your portal. I think part of the problem might be that I use a web browser that restricts tracking and cookies. I shouldn't be denied coverage or access because I choose a browser where I don't want to be tracked. So I don't understand how the aforementioned waiver is consistent with your customer's Bill of Rights issued after a grand jury report was come to recommend this customer Bill of Rights. I would challenge each and every one of you to read that Bill of Rights, interpret it, and ensure for yourselves that you're satisfying the intent of that Bill of Rights, that you're doing your prospective jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farnsworth. I will ask staff to get with you and see if we can figure out what the access problem is, so that you can, in fact, get in and connect. I think that screenshot will be helpful, so.
Screenshot as of
Thank
this
you.
morning, it says input information, but it won't let me. This is the screenshot that showed there were 34 attempts to track my movement on your website this morning.
Okay. Thank you. A staff member will get with you and see if we can't get this figured out so you have easy access. That certainly is our intent. So thank you for your comments. Did we have any other public comment this morning, Tammy?
I have no further comments.
Okay. We have a presentation by the Ferguson Group this morning. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have some special guests today. So our Washington, D.C. advocates are here, Mark Limbaugh and Chris Kearney. They're going to give you an update on what's going on in Washington, what's happened in the past year, and what they've been doing for Western and all of our customers. So Mark, with that, take it away. Thank you for coming all the way out here and doing this for us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, members of the board. I'm Mark Limbaugh with the Ferguson Group. We've enjoyed our long history of partnership in representing you in Washington, D.C., and certainly last year was no exception. I think we had a great year and had some good accomplishments, and we'll go through those today a little bit. So first of all, I have the usual list of acronyms just for your information of what they mean, and so when I go through those, you'll understand what I'm talking about if I happen to slip into acronym mode, as we do sometimes in Washington. Just as an overview of the slide show today, we'll talk a little bit about the FY24 appropriations process that's ongoing right now, and a little bit about the infrastructure bills and the funding that's out there, and WaterSmart grants that we've been working with you on. Chris is going to update you on the PFAS issues associated with some of the policies that we represent you on. It's not just about money. A lot of it is about talking about affecting federal policy that makes sense and that doesn't put a lot of burden on local governments like yourself. And so that's part of our job, is to keep you informed on that, as well as develop strategies that can help formulate those policies so they're not as restrictive or burdensome. And then we'll talk a little bit about next year, or this coming year. So on the spending bills update, the appropriations process continues. We're under continuing resolution right now that has extended the FY23 funding for federal agencies through a laddered CR, which is, in other words, there's 4 bills, including the energy and water appropriations that appropriates for the Bureau of Reclamation and the Corps, that those expire on January 19th. And then all the other bills, which includes the Interior Environment EPA funding that we've tapped into, expires February 2nd. We do have an earmark request in, and we'll talk a little bit about that shortly, but all of those community project funding requests that congressional delegations, ask for, they're in the bills that have been passed by both the House and the Senate. If they go to a long-term CR, we're unsure just where those would go. They'd probably disappear. And long-term CR is the nuclear option, in my opinion. We did have the new speaker, Mr. Johnson from Louisiana, say that if we can't come to agreement, where he's going to push for a full-year CR, which basically just extends the FY23 funding, but does away with the congressionally directed spending. So I think they're going to come to an agreement. We heard just a few days ago that the House Conservative Caucus has basically capitulated to the agreed-upon levels that were in the first CR, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, is what they call that. And they did come to an agreement on top-line levels. The Senate has actually, in their appropriations bills, has actually went over that. So they are looking at it as a compromise in and of itself. So once we've gotten past that, then it's going to be up to Congress to decide, between the House bills and the Senate bills, where they should land. And the House bills are currently much lower. The Senate bills are much higher. And then there's some what we call poison pill riders that are messaging policy riders that will never go anywhere, but the majority party wants to make their point. So we'll see how that negotiation goes over those kinds of things, and then hopefully we'll come up with 12 bills that can be passed by the Congress and signed into law by the President. So all that's got to happen before January 19th. So we'll see what happens. Currently, there's not a lot going on this week. I mean, they don't seem to be moving very quickly towards this. So I think after the first of the year, it'll be another frenetic pace type situation. There is additional funding provided in the bills, and it's a typical breakdown of water conservation, environmental restoration, fish passage, the WIN Act, which is a storage component, Title 16 funding, and the Water Smart was plussed up by the Senate only, but I'm sure the Senate numbers will probably come into play. Because they, typically Reclamation plays the budget game of only asking for a portion of the money that Congress usually provides for the Water Smart Grants program. This is on top of what they already got in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act for Water Smart, and that's kind of the funding that they've been putting out on the street lately, and it's significant funding, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. Your community project request in the FY24 budget was included in the House Interior Environment bill, and that's for $959,752 for the backflow replacements on your system, and that would come from the State and Tribal Assistance Grants, or STAG grants, and the Drinking Water SRF program. The FY25 budget process is now basically underway internally at OMB. They have the President's request. They probably already have done a pass back on that request, and those negotiations are probably continuing. We don't have a lot of information on that because that's usually internal to the agencies, but we do know that the President's budget request is due to Congress on February 5th, this first Monday in February. So we'll be looking at the FY25 request here shortly. Hopefully the FY24 will be done by then. And then we'll also be looking at, okay, are we going to ask for additional funding for Western projects in the 25 process? Our priorities last year, it's still a very similar list. We stay pretty consistent. The HCP on the Santa Ana River, Upper Santa Ana River, MARB and DCIP grant implementation, the Water Smart grants programs, infrastructure legislation implementation. That's what I talked about the infrastructure bills, community funding requests, and California water infrastructure in general, and the PFAS regulation. And then we did have a trip to DC in May of this last year, and talked with our delegation, with some of the committee staff, and with the administration officials. So that was a very successful trip. Western has always done a great job of sending folks that are well respected in DC and have a great message that we're working hard and we're doing a good job. And I think that's incredibly important in keeping a credible presence in front of our delegation, in front of the agencies that are headed up in DC. I'm going to turn it over to Chris now for a little update on the PFAS issues. There he is.
Figured either way it was going to be. Good morning, Board President and members of the board. It's a great opportunity to be out here in sunny California, where I can assure you it is a much more enjoyable place to be at any time of the day than it is back in Washington, just in general. So your traffic could be a little less, but other than that, it's a terrific place to be. So thanks for just taking a couple of quick minutes to talk about PFAS. As a quick reminder, the administration, when they started early on, made PFAS a high priority at the EPA. Administrator Regan is a former head of Environment and Natural Resources in the state of North Carolina, where PFAS was very much of an issue. So he took a leadership role when he first came in, assembled all of his leadership team, and they put together what they call a strategic roadmap. It's really a plan to integrate all the different offices across EPA, solid waste, water, air, and so forth on all things PFAS. It's a pretty comprehensive plan. It runs from mundane to sort of headline-grabbing items. I will tell you that they are working very hard and very diligently to implement it, and they're taking all aspects of it very seriously. They're also the administration's actually taking sort of a whole-of-government approach to this issue. The Consumer Product Safety Commission is now even getting involved in addressing the issues of PFAS and definitional items of what can be in materials and so forth. So the headliners, though, this year are the same as they have been going back to last year, only perhaps picking up a little bit more speed, and that is we have reached the point on the PFAS and PFOA proposed Superfund regulation that has now gone through draft for comment. Comment period has closed. We fully expect that to be final here. They keep saying by the end of this year. My hunch is it probably slips a little bit. The most central, there are a lot of issues around that designation. The most important for us and for water agencies across the country is how to treat the issue of now hazardous designations under Superfund, which means things like liability, polluter pays, litigation. How do we avoid being ensnared in that one, whereas the term has become coined passive receivers? That is, it just happens to be coming through our system, and now we're potentially touched. To what degree does that impact us? So there has been a full court press from the very beginning of even the thought of this idea by the EPA to address this issue by the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, ACWA, the good work and leadership that you all have demonstrated through comment letters, and your staff have continued to be engaged. We've made our voices known at state and federal level, and the national organizations have passionately argued that we should have this exemption. The environmental folks and EPA and others have said if it would require a statutory change. That's the crux. And if you make a statutory change, you're potentially opening that Pandora's box to where do you stop the exemption. So what EPA is proposing is that when they go final, they will issue essentially a policy document, a white paper, if you will, that makes clear sort of what their intentions are and effectively, and I'm sort of colloquially shorthanding this, but who will go after and who we won't, essentially. And they're essentially trying to say, don't worry, we understand your situation as water users, as water agencies, and so we won't pursue you. That still has not stopped the lobbying effort, but that's likely where the regulation comes out. So the devil's in the details in terms of what that document looks like. I think it could be a jumping off point for legislation. It could potentially be something that we could turn to use a bipartisan effort in the House and Senate to say, here's where EPA thinks you should go. Let's do a piece of legislation that sticks just to that. Something we're thinking about. The other one that's also significant for us is the Safe Drinking Water Standards proposed regulation. That also has gone through the comment process and is looking to become final. For us, that will essentially take a basket of about 6 specific PFAS chemicals that will be designated, and they'll have standards. The challenge there is to cleaning to what standard? Craig in particular had a good dialogue with the folks at EPA back in when they came to visit about really sort of pressing EPA and raising the consciousness of that issue and what the standard could be, and trying to make sure that they recognize the reality of sort of what the real world is about when it comes to what's already in water and what's already in material. So again, a good example of where you guys were able to bring some technical expertise to the folks in those meetings. The other thing that we're watching closely is that EPA feels the clock of the election. And so they're not waiting on the PFAS and PFOA arena to stop at just sort of 2 major elements. They've got several others that they are looking at that they think are common in society. And the lobbying effort is, again, continuing from the same folks advocating on passive receivers to say, hey, wait a second, if you need to designate these as this class, at least do it under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act is what RCRA stands for, because that is a level of regulation that requires special treatment and disposal, but it doesn't bring sort of the regulatory and legal hammer that Superfund does. It still requires some different treatment, so it's not like you're just dumping it in a landfill, but it's not the kind of trouble that we're seeing in the Superfund. So then finally, as we turn the corner to 2024, as I said, I think we expect those items to become into finalization, those 2 regulations. There are a number of other smaller sort of cats and dogs, if you will, that they're paying attention to. The one thing I will say before I leave this, though, is because of Marb Air Force Base, I will tell you that there is a lot of interest in EPA continuing to work with the Defense Department and keeping track of what is happening on the defense side of things, which we'll talk about in a minute. So the whole of government, EPA understands that there's a big defense side of this. They're separate, but they're having conversations. So against the backdrop of the agency work, Congress has not really done a whole lot this year. The primary thing that happened was that this summer, Chairman Carper of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee released a bipartisan with the Republicans, a draft proposed bill on PFAS, which really did 3 things. One, it would establish a definition of what constitutes PFAS. It would statutorily codify or put into law those 6 safe drinking water, the safe drinking water standard, the regulation that EPA is working on, and codify those 6 into law. So now it would be statutorily, the regulation would now be put into law. They did not, and then thirdly, it prescribes some funding for development of advanced technologies to deal with treatment of PFAS. It explicitly did not touch the Superfund regulation issue and the passive receiver issue, or any of the other work that they're doing. As a consequence of that, the Republicans on the committee said, well, we really believe strongly that not only passive receivers in the water space should be exempt, but agriculture, airports, and 2 or 3 others. So they have a short bill that would exempt 6 different entities from the Superfund requirements. That set off a furious lobbying effort between environmental folks advocating to Senate EPW, don't you dare give that exemption, and don't let that happen in a legislative markup. And the Republicans saying, and this is a very bipartisan effort, don't you dare not do that, and we're not going to support you if you don't. Consequence, the draft bill's been hanging out there since June. For those of us who've been in town a long time, we have a lot of fun sort of watching the Mexican standoff here, starting to see who's going to blink. But know that the organizations that you guys are part of, the visits that Craig and Tim and the team had, contributed to that conversation and continued to the pressure of the don't you dare do this without the exemption. And so we continue to work on that on a daily basis. But right at the moment, they're just waiting on the regulations. And then finally, on NDAA, the key there is in the last bill, in the last National Defense Authorization Bill, which the Senate Armed and House Armed Services Committee proudly would tell you if they were here, that they have passed into law an NDAA every year since 1962. It's the only it's the longest running piece of bipartisan legislation to be enacted in the Congress, which is kind of a little trivia. But for PFAS, the last version of the bill essentially did 2 things. It directed the Defense Department to identify the top 50 most contaminated defense sites or formerly used sites for PFAS and start to prioritize the funding of that. It also asked and gave them a deadline and a timeline to produce that study by. Marb's not on that list. But it expanded up to a study that's now just about to come to conclusion, and there's a tentative report that they've identified about 400 sites within about 300 military installations at an estimated cost of about $7 billion for cleanup. And we expect MARB is likely on that list. Obviously, there's not $7 billion lying around, but rest assured that the Defense Department and the Hill and we continue to realize that MARB remains a priority, and that's part of the process. So that's really the main thing where we're at. We're watching for the rest of this Congress, not only what happens on the things I just talked about, but occasionally we will see individual bills be dropped on related issues on TSCA and other on PFAS. So we're just keeping an eye on seeing what happens election years. Can be funny animals sometimes. So with that, turn it back over to Mark. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. This last year, Western was, I would say, extremely successful in your grants. You have a great staff. Melissa does a great job. We are just simply part of that process. We're not leading it at all. You know, we basically look over the grant after it's written and make sure it's checking all the boxes and that it's a successful effort. The Defense Community Infrastructure Pilot Grant that we went for, we did not get. What was interesting is that I looked at some of the ones that did win, and I think our project was probably better than most of those. So I think I'm encouraging Western to, again, apply for that grant, and we'll see what happens on the sewer force main and lift station. WaterSmart was successful, however. You guys got $100,000 from a small scale water efficiency grants, $200,000 on the water recycling construction planning grant, which was one of the larger ones, and then $705,000 for water energy efficiency grants. So those three were grant applications that you got, your staff wrote, that we reviewed and that were successful. So congratulations on those. Overall, just looking in the past, FY22, this is funding that we're still working on retrieving. It's sitting there in the bank, and certainly $3 million for the Phase 1 PFAS treatment pilot, and then Phase 2 was $3.4 million from Mr. Takano and Mr. Padilla, and the $3 million was obviously the late Senator Feinstein and Senator Padilla. And as Representative Issa, his request for 3.9, we've got that for recycling, water recycling efforts in the Western service area, and certainly we're going to put that to good work as we develop Phase 2 of the water recycling facility project. And then in 2024, I mentioned that we are in the House bill for the $959,000 Mr. Takano had requested. So that's successful as well. Priorities for next year, not a lot of change. We definitely want to continue our efforts to successfully put those that funding on the ground out here. And certainly your staff is working very hard to get that done. And certainly we're going to be working just as hard to get that funding into those projects. We're also going to be looking at more WaterSmart grants. I know that the water energy efficiency grant applications are now out. And there's other grant programs that are going to be coming out. And that's all coming from the bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that put $8.3 billion into the Bureau of Reclamation. And that's about 6 times their annual budget. So it's a good opportunity to put this money out and get some things for your ratepayers and make sure that you have that resiliency and long-standing commitment to water supply here in the valley. Also, looking at the PFAS regulation, as Chris mentioned, we're going to be staying on top of that. And then we're also looking forward to, again, another spring trip to D.C. to talk about all the good things that Western is doing out here in the valley. And with that, Chris and I will stand for questions, and we really appreciate the opportunity to serve Western and look forward to continuing that relationship. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Excellent presentation, very comprehensive. Thank you for that. Do we have questions from board members? Start with Director Torres.
Thank you so much for that presentation. That was great. I just have one question, or actually one quick question and one that might not be so quick. But the first one is we're seeing a lot of turnover here in California. McCarthy is retiring at the end of the year. Just a lot of turnover in the House. Do you expect that to affect the grants that or the applications that we have pending?
Mr. President, Director Torres, that's a great question. Certainly something that California, lost a longstanding senator. Luckily, Senator Padilla stepped right up and got on the Energy Committee and is on the Environment and Public Works Committee. So those two committees are very important to California, and is going to be take over the mantle for a lot of these natural resource and water issues, and he's very good to work with. Senator Butler is there for a short period of time. We'll see how that goes, and we'll certainly look forward to working with your new senator as the electorate decides this fall. In terms of the House, you've got some longstanding, very well-respected members in your delegation. They've been successful in representing you in D.C. It was unfortunate that Mr. McCarthy was ousted from his position, and I think it's continuing to rattle around in his head as to why that happened, and really not, he probably doesn't feel like he can do as much as he was doing. So I don't know what his thoughts are on that, but I think anytime you lose long-standing senior members of Congress from your state, it's not helpful. So you start over again, basically, with a new member. But on the other hand, we've seen those new members take off and run and become committee chairman and everything else. So, it just depends on who you get to replace those. So,
All right,
Chris,
thank
do you have
you.
anything to add?
Yeah, no, I would echo all of that. The only thing I would say is I think the House is so close now, and the Senate is so close in terms of Republicans and Democrats. The likelihood of flipping is a coin flip. Anybody here could guess as well as anybody else. But I think one of the things that's true because of redistricting and a lot of other things, the days of sort of wide gaps in one party control over the other is long since gone. And so the need to continue to show the kind of bipartisanship we've seen, regardless of party, is likely, and certainly the way the Senate rules are. So to the degree to which that dynamic comes into play, I think I would argue that we are in a better situation going forward, or as good as we are now, because those majorities just aren't going to, somebody's not going to be able to tell one side or the other to just go pound sand, so to speak.
Right.
So I think that'll work to our advantage in terms of how those margins go.
That's good. That's good. And then my second question is, unfortunately, our country is funding 2 proxy wars. And I want to know if that continues, how could that potentially affect infrastructure funding or the funding that we tend to go for?
Well, obviously, any kind of drain on the Treasury is a drain on the Treasury. I mean, that's one thing. However, the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act were both, passed with funding that was appropriated at the time, and that money is sitting there. So over the next several years, the next 2 or 3 years anyway, at least, it was a 5-year program. Some are longer, some are shorter, but that funding is there and it's being dispersed, and we're going to take advantage of that as much as we can at this point. Down the road, I don't know. I think a lot of it's going to depend on just where the priorities of the country go, and that's. But for now, we do have a priority on infrastructure, and we're going to take advantage of it.
All right, thank you.
Great. Director Roden.
Thank you so much for this report, and I appreciated your acronym list at the front. There were a few throughout the report that I didn't necessarily see on the list, but most of all of those you guys translated for me. But there were 2 that I just wasn't sure of. One is on page 10, and it says drinking water SRF. And I didn't know what SRF was.
That's the State Revolving Fund.
Okay, State Revolving Fund. Okay, and I just have one more.
See, I can't even keep up with the acronym.
I know, there's so many. The other is kind of a repeat one. It's on page 15 of the agenda, and it was the community project funding. Each one of those bullet points has STAG, S-T-A-G, and then 2 of them are followed by WWSRF, and one is followed by DWSRF.
Okay, the STAG is the State and Tribal Assistant Grants Program at APA. and that's in the Interior Environment appropriation. And that's usually the one that has a lot of community project funding requests out of that, because it's a big item in EPA's budget. The WWSRF is a wastewater SRF, and then the other is the drinking water. And sometimes you'll see CWSRF, that's a clean water, which is the same as the wastewater on the SRF programs.
Okay, and drinking water. Okay. That was it. This is all very fascinating to me, because not only what you report to us not only really has to do with water, but some of the concepts you could repeat over other issues that other agencies are working on and, you know, that our local folks are concerned about. So this overview is very valuable. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Director Dinstead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. I certainly always enjoy the reports. I always enjoy going back to DC. And my question was, Mark, on your comment for the reapplication for the sewer force main, and you looking at other awards, is there anything we need to do to tweak on our application to try to be a little bit more successful in that? I mean, I'm kind of surprised that you said ours was better and others got awarded.
Well, beauty's in the eye of the beholder here, and obviously I'm very partial to Western's applications, but I think that your staff has sat down with the Defense Department and gone over kind of how things could basically be improved to better meet their intent of what they're looking at for in the program. So that's going to be helpful in informing us as to when we put that grant application together. And I think Melissa may have some thoughts on that too. But I think all in all, it's a great project, and it's one that's very important to the base. And so it's good to just keep at it. A lot of times it takes 2 or 3 times before you really can really break through and get something like that. But
No, absolutely. And the only other comment I would say is maybe we add somebody to the list on our visits moving forward that we might have a sit-down and conversation in front of that may be of value to us, just to highlight that. I don't know how that plays out or not, but
Yeah.
I'll tell you, from the perspective and going back to DC for several years to walk the halls with these two gentlemen, to have them talked about by name and recognized before they even get there and people greet you folks is so incredibly valuable to us. You guys are well respected on the Hill. I've had other comments come from other agencies, and I so value and treasure our relationship and everything that you guys worked on a daily basis and what you bring to the table for us. So I just want to thank you for all of the work that you guys have done over the years to get us on the Hill, to recognize us, to get our projects pushed through, to get our funding done, and what that has done for Western and the customers here. So.
Well, I appreciate that, but, the real work is done by you guys and your staff. And we're fortunate to have a great client in Western that we can go to the Hill and be proud of talking about what we're talking about and showing off what we're doing and all the work that you guys put in the hours to do. Not everybody has that. So you ought to treasure that and value that as being a positive force in this community. Without you guys, I'm not sure whether you'd have a community. And that's the way it is with any water, agency. It's easy to say, hey, the water comes from the tap, It's like food coming from the store and all that kind of thing. I mean, somebody's doing the work somewhere. And so we always value that way more than we do ourselves. We're just part of your staff at this point. So we help out where we can. So thank you, Brenda, though.
Thank you.
Director Risby. Okay. Again, thank you for the presentation, and as Director Dinstead said, thank you for all the work you do on our behalf. And we do kind of look at you as members of our staff. You just work remotely most of the time, and quite successfully. So thank you very much, and hope you get to hang around for a little bit for this nice day.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Yeah, yeah.
Consistently.
Enjoy the Festival of Lights.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, brings us to the consent calendar. We only have 2 items. I would note that we all received an email from the board secretary that some very minor amendments that changed nothing were made to the minutes. It was just correcting some typos and things, and that was reposted. So what we will be voting on is the
Amendment.
revised minutes, or the corrected minutes. And with that, would anybody like to pull anything?
So move to approve the entire calendar.
Okay, so we have a
I'll
motion.
second.
And a second. Any discussion? If not, Mr. General Counsel, do we need to take a roll call vote, or can we just do a voice vote on these sorts of things?
A voice vote is fine.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions?
Wow, that was 3 years.
Quicker.
It took us a while to get there. Not
Yeah.
3 years, we had to get out of the.
Yeah, the condition, I was like, I don't even know
yeah.
what to say.
Okay, do we have anything to add to the agenda, Mr.
I-
General
Board,
Manager?
I'm sorry, Board President. I'm being informed that a roll call vote would be appropriate.
Darn it.
I apologize.
Okay,
That was nice
I
practice.
Well, let's do
apologize.
that one
If
too,
I
then.
could clarify, because we are utilizing Zoom, even though you all are present, the best
Public.
practice, because we are offering the public to be on Zoom, is for actual roll call vote.
okay. Would you please conduct a roll call vote?
She's the buzzkill.
Zoom.
I'll own that. Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. Your motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you.
To Tammy's defense, once we get an electronic voting system, we won't need a roll call.
That is correct.
Yes.
So we advocate for better technology.
Thank you,
Unless
Director
there's
Torres.
Unless there's new legislation.
Which,
Like, we
That's the
each have to
caveat.
push a button.
Another wet blanket.
Hey, I'm just following the rules.
Mr. General Manager, do we have anything to add to the agenda?
Well, I'm super excited that we actually do.
Hey!
I don't know how many meetings I don't get to add anything. Today, I'd like to add something. Unfortunately, I forgot to put something on the agenda. So we have to, at every board meeting, go back and acknowledge the emergency repairs for the Mockingbird Canyon pipeline. So we need to add that to the agenda under action items, so we'll need a vote to do that.
Okay, I look for a motion to
So
add
moved.
this item.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Is there any discussion? Tammy, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Thank you, Director Torres.
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. So our action agenda, we have one item and then the one we have just added. So let's take the first item, the report on the Community Facilities District 88-1 and CFD number 99-1. Mr. Miller.
Well, Spencer Melendez is here. He finally convinced Kevin to take a vacation so he could talk more. So Spencer is going to do the presentation for us today. Spencer?
Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board. Western Water administers 2 community facilities districts, or CFDs, within our Marietta service area, CFD 88-1 and 99-1. This item addresses the annual accountability report for CFDs to comply with Senate Bill 165, which requires the reporting of 2 items. First, the amount of special taxes that have been collected and expended, and second, the status of any project required to be funded by the bonds. The Senate Bill 165 report, which was prepared by Wilden Financial for each respective CFD, are included in your packet, which fulfill these requirements. In summary, CFD 88-1 collected total assessments or taxes of $133,000 and incurred total expenditures of $127,000. CFD 99-1 collected total assessments of $153,000 and incurred total expenditures of $147,000. To address the second requirement of Senate Bill 165 for both CFDs, improvements were completed in previous years. The final maturity date of the bonds issued for these CFDs will be in October of 2030. Thank you. At this moment, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Are there any, well, first, is there any public comment?
There is not.
Okay, then are there any questions or comments from board members?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Both 88-1 and 99-1 are a maturity date of October of 2030, both?
That is my understanding. I could look back at that and get
Okay,
back with you.
I thought there was a year separation between them, so, okay. I just wanted to confirm that. And just as, you know, we look at our financial planning and forecasting for the future, and we need to talk about how these are going to be paid down and eventually go away, and what that's going to look like for our long-term budget forecasting for Marietta Division and what that looks like. So just want to put that kind of out there on the page as we're rolling forward and doing our significant planning over the next 5 years or so. And we're looking at what that is and what this income loss as these mature out and eventually will close, what that looks like. Just want to kind of put that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Is
Move
there
to
a motion?
Move to approve.
We have a motion.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, Tammy, would you please conduct a roll call vote?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and that brings us to the item that we have just added, which is renewing the declaration of emergency for repairs of the Mockingbird Canyon pipeline. I would look for a motion.
Derek, before you move, maybe Derek, you came all the way down here. You'd like to do like a quick update on where it is. We're moving right along, so.
Yes. Okay.
And maybe the extent of how long we're going to have to continue to have this in front of the board.
Great,
Until we're done.
Absolutely. So just wanted to give a quick update. I did present this item, a related item that was to this emergency declaration at the engineering committee. And I am happy to report that the progress is continuing very well. It looks like by the end of the week will be completed, assuming everything goes really well. And then what we plan to do is bring the item that we brought to the engineering committee to the full board on the 20th. And at that point, we will ask for the amendment as well as to request that the emergency item be closed. For now, what we're asking for is a continuance of the emergency declaration.
And that would be my motion.
Okay, we
Second.
have a motion and a second. Tammy, did you catch the second?
I didn't catch who made the motion.
I did.
Director
Thank
Dinstead.
Director Dunstall.
And the second was Director Torres. Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, would you please do a roll call vote?
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, directors.
Great, thank you. Brings us then to reports. Mr. General Counsel.
I do not have a report, Mr. President and members of the board, but I would remind the board that we recently had an Aqua conference, and so under AB 1234, it'd be appropriate to report on attendance at that conference.
Okay, great. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you. I've got a couple different items I'd like to report on. We'll be doing a water supply update as soon as I'm done, so I think Melissa's going to be doing that. Some interesting comments and interesting starting point on the State Water Project. Report on the Met Camp for Water Task Force. So this is Metropolitan's Climate Adaptation Master Plan. as I reported last time, they've changed the long-term planning committee into a task force that now includes general managers with board members. So we had our first meeting on the 21st, Thanksgiving week. So that was really interesting. There's 11 general managers that are on that, including myself, and 8 Met board members. So we had that robust conversation. They're talking about project scoring criteria as to what projects should rise to the top of Met's long-term planning process. So after talking with the general managers, that's not going to be a short discussion as they contemplate what other things need to be involved. I wanted to report on Aqua. We had a nice representation from our board members. Thank you for board members that were able to go, and quite a few staff members. It's a great opportunity for staff to really spend some quality time engaging with other agencies. And as you're all aware, there's some great sessions that go on, but there's also some great conversations that happen in between and after the sessions. And that's really valuable for our staff to build our networks so that we're very comfortable talking with other agencies across the state. And I made great effort in that area to spend a lot of time in the hallways, making sure that we're continuing to build collaboration with other entities in other areas of the state. We also had an outstanding presentation by our very own Sarah McDonald, who talked about building customer trust. I sat in on the panel. It was an excellent panel. Sarah did a great job, but so did the other 2 speakers. Really interesting data on trust. And we have a lot of work to do. As public agencies, we don't do that well. But we do better than some others. But I think it's important that we continue to focus on, building the trust of our customers. And I think we've improved by leaps and bounds at Western, but our work is not done. A ton of conversations about long-term planning issues, both with our agencies that were there regionally and Southern California and statewide. I had numerous meetings with ag entities in the Central Valley talking about California Water for All. We had a really nice meeting that we organized with Jerry Brown. So Jerry was here 2 months ago talking about sites. So we got an update. He's thrilled to give updates right now because they've made great progress. And he's also been approved to implement the governor's CEQA fast tracking program. So that's really good news. They are also in line to acquire their first property. I know Director Denstead and I have both heard that, well, this project will never move because they don't even own the property. Well, why would you buy the property for a reservoir if you don't have approval to build the reservoir and rights to put water in it? So they've got to check all these boxes, but Jerry is actively pursuing his first property purchase, and he'll do that right after their board is comfortable that they have the appropriate approvals in place to move forward on that project. I also organized a meeting of the general managers that are part of the camp process at Met. So these are, I had 8 of the 10 or 11 general managers at Aqua. So we all sat down and compared notes of what our intentions were to get out of the process. Because I think if they're Met needs to be careful what they ask for, but if you're inviting the general managers to the process, we're going to weigh in. And we have a different perspective, I think, than the electeds. We're much more comfortable with selection of projects and planning projects and funding projects. So I think it brings a different environment. But we also want to make sure that as general managers, we're helping that process move forward, and we're not delaying the programs in any way, but we think we can help move that process forward. California Water for All. We had a luncheon. We organized a luncheon. We took advantage of the lack of a Met program on Wednesday at lunch, and so we organized our own lunch to support and update all of the supporters of California Water for All, the funders and the supporters. We had RSVPs for about 65 people. We ended up with over 80 people there. Luckily, I think Sarah made the call at the last minute, bring in more tables, and the tables were all full. So it was great. And so we had KP, both Ed Manning, who is our lobbyist, and KP Public Affairs, who's running the education program for California Water for All, there to make presentations. Danielle Blassett-Hayden from CMUA, who's the bill sponsor, gave the update on it being a 2-year bill and where it stands right now. There's a huge effort that we're participating in with CMUA and the other kind of leaders on the bill to plan our strategy, because it's going to come fast, that we're going to be back in front of that committee again. There's a new committee chair, so one of our strategies there would be a more friendly committee chair next time around, and we think we got there. So that had nothing to do with us. That was just the process. Assemblymember Rivas has renamed, I think, all of the committee chairs. And so we're very, very happy with the committee chair that he selected for that committee, and we'll be working with her. But also, a strategy to get water agencies from all of the committee divisions, districts, to have local input to that representative by a local water entity or community entity or a business entity, to make sure they understand the value of the bill. So there's a lot of work going on. We already received commitments for 4 additional agencies to help fund the program out of that luncheon, so that was really good. So we're looking good. It was a really good event. Thank you, directors that joined us. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mr. Miller?
All right, Melissa, you ready? Let's talk about, remember, we during the winter, we're going to want to do monthly water supply updates, statewide water supply updates. So we're kicking that off today because we got a state water project allocation to start the year with. So Melissa, it's all yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, directors. Happy to be here to give you the first water supply conditions update for water year 24. Next slide. So just a little recap of what happened over this past water year. The word of the year was whiplash, weather whiplash. That was kind of the new term to coin. You can see here on kind of the left of the screen different photos from where we kind of started out, right? That April 22 snow survey where there was no snow because we had the driest, 3 months on record. Wildfires, just drought signs, extreme shortages, to then that complete opposite change of very high snow conditions, record-breaking, flooding events everywhere, just really that whole change that we experience. And, the nice graphic of, will the weather please make up its mind already? So, next slide. Some of the highlights from this past year of the State Water Project, we had over 30 atmospheric rivers this last water year. Near record-breaking snowpack. Our allocation for the State Water Project rose to 100%, which hadn't happened in a very long time, and we saw a complete reversal in drought conditions. An example here from the photos of Lake Orville, December 22, almost empty, to July 23, where it was full. So again, a complete change from this last water year. Next slide. On the Colorado River, kind of started out first, August 22, Congress gave $4 billion for drought mitigation within the Inflation Reduction Act. Metropolitan and Western are actively engaged in these funds to try to provide and limit our use of Colorado River with different projects that we have. Winter 23, the upper Colorado River Basin also received near record snowpack, and that really helped alleviate some of the pressing concerns that we had on Lake Mead's water levels. May 23, the Lower Basin Plan, we're still actively engaging with the long-term drought strategy for the Colorado River. They propose to conserve at least 3 million acre feet from 23 to 26. And then October 23, they published, that proposal as kind of the proposed action. So no formal things have happened from that yet, but, everyone's really working together to really make sure that the Colorado River conditions stay where we need them to be. Next slide. So this is going to be an interactive one. Can we kind of click through? And another click. Sorry, go back. There we go. So kind of first starting out here, the storage, Metropolitan increased their storage 1.2 million acre feet. You can see that their big focus was really replenishing all of their storage accounts. So here we can see the State Water Project, flexible storage, and in-region storage, just, before they were at very bottom levels, and now they're, almost full. Next slide. They've also been working on out-of-region groundwater banking, again, trying to increase those numbers there. Next slide. And of course, working with the desert agencies to refill those storage banks with different programs that they have. Next slide. And then, of course, working with Lake Mead's account and other Colorado management actions to refill everything that they can. Next slide. So overall, the larger picture here for Metropolitan that they're really focusing on is they've really put a lot into their storage and setting us up nicely for this next water year. Next slide. So, how does that kind of pay off? In 23, they're looking at about 3.4 million acre feet of storage. That's record high. So you can see here from 2000, we've never had that. We kind of started off that way at the beginning of the last drought with about 3.1, 3.2 million acre feet. We saw that kind of decrease down, and then because of that record winter, we're back up and highest that we've ever been. Next slide. So kind of looking ahead to 24, that's a nice picture of Ryan Shaw skiing. Just kidding, it's not him. It's just a random person on the internet. But we thought, it was good because that's what we're hoping for, right? A good snowy season again. Next slide. One of the things that we saw is the State Water Project did release their initial allocation for December of 10%. The State Water Project usually starts low, and then they slowly increase over 2 to 3 more allocation increases. They don't like to increase large and then have to reduce down. So they start low and then see how kind of the winter looks like and increases up. Also this year, it's said to be El Nino's predicted, and that usually is really good climate for California, especially Northern California. So we're hoping to be able to get another wet year. In addition, if we do have another wet year, a lot of our storage accounts are really high, so we're going to see a lot more surplus water being available, hopefully, if we have another wet year. So your water resources team in Western is continually exploring water purchases and storage opportunities. Even though we're not in a drought, we're not, we're still busy trying to make sure that we're capitalizing on this wet season that we hopefully will have. Next slide. All right, and of course, presented by Ryan Shaw. So I'm available for any questions.
Great job, Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan's on Zoom.
Does anyone have questions? Director Roten.
Whoops. Just a couple. On the, I think it's the 5th page, where you're talking about the storage actions. State Water Project flexible storage, what does that encompass?
Do you want to take that one?
Well, I assume that that's Table A and other things. So everyone has rights that's a state water contractor. So Metropolitan has about 2 million acre feet of rights under 100% allocation. So this year they had the right to 2 million acre feet. You've heard me before say that Met's going to leave water behind. Not really behind. That water is not delivered and it went out the Golden Gate Bridge. There is no storage to leave that behind for next year. Hence why we have California Water for All. We need more storage.
Right.
So, but when the state recognized, when DWR recognized how wet it was last year, they start trying to take actions to move more water. So as some entities and some of the contractors can't take the water, they can shift water to what they call Table A, and it gets really complicated in terms. But basically what they're saying is, this water's not going to move. You can apply for it. Another contractor can apply for it. And so there's this accounting method to allow additional water to be flexibly moved from one state contractor to another. So that's Table A. Well, unfortunately, this year, a lot of entities could not take advantage of that because Metropolitan could have taken Table A water and moved it down here, and we could have recharged it we, as the Met member agencies, could have recharged it into groundwater basins. There was no capacity to move it down here. So they couldn't even move, and their comment was, well, we can't move our whole 2 million, why would we go and acquire Table A water in addition? So this is the need for much more storage and transport capacity, because as we like to say, you have to be able to take a big gulp in wet years, and we couldn't take a big gulp this year. And I will talk a little bit more about the 10% allocation too after you're done asking Melissa questions.
And Ryan Shaw has his hand raised.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Good morning. Apologies for not being there in person. Melissa, great job. Director Roden, to your question, we really like this slide. It just shows that Metropolitan and all of its member agencies, including Western, is doing everything we can to take, like Craig just said, wet water when it's available. I mean, I think you can see it, but there's yellow dashed lines, kind of like historic or average, if you will. And you can see that all the green is way above. So State Water Project side and the Colorado River side, I think Metropolitan, all of us have done a really great job this last year. But we can do better. And I think that's what Craig was kind of hinting at. There's a lot more to come.
Okay.
Sorry.
And another observation, you noticed desert water in Coachella Valley, how it didn't get there?
Yeah.
If you were at Aqua and you're a water nerd and you're driving either to or from Palm Desert and you go over the Whitewater Wash and you look to the right, you looked north, you saw a bridge that was
Remnants
all
of a bridge.
teetering on failure. There was a huge amount of damage from the, whatever it was called, the hurricane, the tropical depression. And they're limited in what they're able to take right now. So normally they'd be pouring water into storage, but because of the damage, and their groundwater recharge facilities were devastated, and Metropolitan actually loaned them personnel and equipment to go and put those back in place, and now the bridge is failing, so they're gonna have to turn off the inflow again to demolish that bridge, and then as soon as that's over, they'll go back to recharging water again. So they may be able to catch up some, but that's why, otherwise that one would have been above the oil line too.
Yeah, I wondered about that. And I didn't notice the bridge headed out, but one of the newscasts that I happened to have on in my room while we were out there was saying that they had approved the demolition of it. And I was like, whoa, I didn't realize it was, when I went home, you could see that bridge right
there.
off the freeway.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that is a mess. So thank you, because I was curious as to why they weren't able to get theirs up above that yellow line. So thank you for that explanation. I just wasn't sure what flexible meant, but yes, the overall good news is everything is filling up and or beyond what would normally be full. You kind of touched on actually what my second question was about the reference to Table A allocation. I just wasn't familiar with what Table A allocation was.
Yeah, it's part of the state water contract, and it is, like I said, it's just a table to kind of market water when there's surplus water. Actually, not even surplus water, it could just be that one contractor isn't gonna be able to take all of their water. And so they can make it available for other state contractors.
Oh, I'll think of it like A for auction. Okay, I like that.
So Valley District is another contractor, and they had the same problem. They had access to Table A water, and I don't know how much they were able to take, but yeah, not very much.
Yeah, but then like you said too, we didn't have enough capacity to be able to move it. Not enough storage, but also not enough to be able to move it to where folks wanted it to go.
Yeah, it's a good concept, but if you can't take advantage of it, what good is it?
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, thank you so much. Great report.
Other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Well, let me,
you.
before Melissa's, done, that's all part of her report too. So the 10% allocation by the State Water Project sounds really low. And they're very conservative. So last year they started really low, but it was on the heels of 3 dry years, so you knew it was going to start at 0 or 5%. And then it ended up at 100%. I think most of the water managers were thinking that it wouldn't start at 10% because everything's very full. So it's a little shocking. So Friday at the Met Managers meeting, we talked about this for a long time. And one of the things that's going on is that San Luis Reservoir, which is kind of a little bit of the hub of the State Water Project, and on our tour, we went to San Luis Reservoir, and it was literally, waves were lapping over the spillway. It was so full. And so all the managers assumed that we would start the year with San Luis just as full. And when did we take the tour up there? Was it May? June. So from June until right now, San Luis is only 41% full. So 60% of the water has been moved out of San Luis. And you've heard me talk about how Metropolitan has left 500,000 acre feet in the project. So what's happening? So it was news to us as managers. And what's happening is there's a water quality rule, a regulation in the Delta that says the salinity, there's a certain, it's like a contour line of salinity. So let's just say the 1,000 TDS line in the Delta is supposed to be in a certain location. And it moves all the time depending on storm flows or dryness. And the drier it gets, it starts moving inland further. Well, when we had the tropical depression, and then again we had a super high tide, followed by a low pressure system, it allowed that contour to bump inland further. Well, under the regulatory guidelines, it just triggers a movement, and so they had to pour water into the Delta just to move that artificial line back towards the ocean. And so a lot of our water got poured in the Delta instead of being saved for future use in a dry year. Now, you may say that seems crazy, but those are the regulatory guidelines. And so you'll hear people, water managers, talk about we need storage and we need transmission, but we need smarter regulatory guidelines because the environmental special interest groups, they go to bat for the benefit of the fish. And they land on these rules, and everyone kind of says, I guess it's close enough. But did any fish benefit from the movement of that line?
Probably not.
Probably not. But that's a guideline that DWR has to follow in statute. And so we poured water out the Golden Gate to move that line. And so it just highlights how difficult the Delta is to deal with and why we need a Delta conveyance system that isn't impacted by those regulatory constraints.
Okay, so my geography is terrible, but I was on that trip, saw that reservoir full. I was thinking it's south of the Delta.
South, but
So why is it?
because
why-
water that would have been moved to San Luis instead was poured out the Delta.
Oh, it went a
There are
different
still demands on
place.
San Luis by the contractors.
Okay, got it.
So the normal demands are coming out, but nothing's going back in. But in reality, how it would work is there's just an exchange. So, you wouldn't have actually moved water in and moved water out. It just would have bypassed San Luis, and San Luis would have stayed full. So
Okay.
Yeah. How many acre feet was that? Do we know roughly?
I should. I saw a graphic of it. I can't remember. Josh can remember.
500,000 to 600,000 acre feet.
Thank you.
One too many.
Yeah.
Yeah, put a dollar figure on that at $1,200 an acre foot. Wait, I've got a calculator. Yeah, Kevin's not here. We can do this without Kevin.
So do you know, are they going to try to put some more water back in the reservoir?
It's just $600 million.
$600 million, yeah.
In $600 million worth of water.
At the low end of the.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think they will, because now they've kind of set the 10% allocation, and now all the contractors are going to have to follow the allocation. If that allows San Luis to creep up, great. If it's a wet year, it'll creep up.
Okay.
If it turns out to be a dry year, it won't, I don't think, but we'll just have to see. I mean, those are like operational details of how they operate the State Water Project.
Yeah,
But
interesting.
yeah, this is like, this is like an overall mass balance of water in the whole system. It's really a shame. We're smarter than this as a society. We should have better ways to do this. Yes. We are. That concludes Melissa's report.
I liked it better without that last part.
Well, I think one of the reasons I share that is it's really easy to pretend like things like that don't happen. So when we get to Sacramento and we walk the hallways and we talk to our legislators, they have no idea what's going on. So when we say we need more infrastructure, they're like, no, I think we're fine, because I talked to these other groups and they came in and they said, no, fish concerns and Delta. And so they get bombarded from all sides. And the more that we're honest with them about what's happening, it educates them, because this stuff falls on them.
Yeah.
And the administration is putting people on the State Water Board, and they're directing DWR, and they need to recognize that there's an alternative perspective. And, I really feel strongly that, and you've seen this in our actions as Western in California Water for All, if we're not vocal and going out and talking about this, it's never going to change. Guarantee, and it's going to change, but it's not going to change the way we want it to change. It's going to go the other direction.
Yeah. So, well, and I think it's significant that a person in your position, Craig, did not know about this as it was happening. So very few people knew about it. And I think more do need to know about it. So thank you for letting us know, even though you did kill the buzz. So, okay, that concludes General Manager's reports. Okay. Brings us to Director's reports and requests. SAPA met yesterday. They made administrative changes to the employees' personnel handbook to comply with new state regulations or legislation. Of more significance, they directed the general manager to issue RFPs for a class and comp study for almost all of SAPA's employees, of which there are not a lot. It's like 18 employees.
I was just about to ask how many.
Yeah, about 18, I believe. But that's not been done in quite some time. So it was just time to do that. And that's it for SAPA. MWD, I don't think is going to be quite so quick.
Can I report on something with SAPA, with
Please.
OWOW?
Please.
So the OWOW meeting happened, and I wanted to report one of the significant things that came about was this cloud seeding thing. And we had our first official cloud seeding that took place with the last storm event that happened in November. So the pilot study has begun. They've launched it on their website live. You can go and track it and find out. They do press releases when all of that is happening. So kind of curious to see how that money and that grant opportunity is going to pan out. If we're going to see significant changes in weather cycling and patterns, and if we're going to achieve any more additional rainfall, and how we're going to account for that. So just kind of wanted to put that out there to let everybody know. That's what was the significant thing that happened at OWOW since our last meeting. So
They operated 2 of the seeding locations, multiple seeders. And it did not seem to generate any rainfall, which was not truly a surprise. It was kind of an iffy storm. But what it did demonstrate is that the physical system actually works. You turn it on and it goes, and it does emit the particles that, in theory,
Should be injected.
moisture will condense around and fall down and make us wetter and snowier. So it was a successful demonstration of the physical technology. It was not a successful demonstration of making more rain. But
Of the aqueous technology.
Yeah, it was not a real promising storm.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big surprise that it didn't produce much.
So just kind of putting that out there for the sake of everybody's knowledge, so. Metropolitan, we did have, it's kind of been a whirlwind with Met. We had a special board meeting yesterday. I was overjoyed to travel in 3 hours worth of traffic to get to that meeting and left my residence at 6 a.m. It was a first ever board meeting that was literally across the largest spans, I think. The delegation of Met directors, along with the chair, along with the general manager, along with several staff members, actually traveled out to Gene Camp and had attendance at the meeting there, which included tribal members from the Colorado River and things that are going on with the compact with the Colorado River. So that was an interesting dynamics, first time it's ever been done. I wanted, Met staff had been planning for this for 2 months since they learned that the chair wanted to do this. And it went off, I think, without a hitch. At least I didn't notice anything that was problematic with it. There was a very lengthy presentation regarding desert housing, which has been a huge concern with the workforce out there. And one of the things that is of major concern is retention of employees out in the desert, and how do you keep desert folks happy in their position, because it's one necessary, 100% necessary job, and it's a very difficult job. And how do we balance bringing talent out there to be able to operate facilities and be on site and live out there to run all the necessary stuff for us to get water out here, and keep that balance of the needs for putting families out there, putting workers out there, and retaining them in the long haul. So we had a very lengthy discussion regarding some of the desert housing issues, some of the surveys that have been conducted out there, the consultant, what they're bringing forward, some of the amenities that are to be improved, and the challenges that we face trying to mobilize contractors out there to do the work. So that's also been a challenge out there for us. But the other big lengthy discussion items, and I'm looking at 27 slides that were presented, was over the Colorado River. And we have a conference coming up that I will be attending for CRUA, which is the Colorado River User Water Association, right?
California
Water Association, there we go. So that conference is taking place here next week. I will be in attendance at that. We'll be talking about the Colorado River, what's going on with the accords, the compacts, the minutes, the agreements. Every single time I hear a presentation, and Bill Hastingcamp is the guru of all things Colorado River with Metropolitan. At some point, we might want to just have Bill come out here and just have a presentation to give to us and talk and show us how smart he is about Colorado River and all of the things that he's been engaged with his entire career sitting at Metropolitan, and the team of people that he works with. But one of the things I was really interested to find out was, and I'm looking at slide number 24 off of the presentation, was the 30 tribe engagement that's going on with the Colorado River Basin tribes, and that there is 2.8 million acre feet of unsettled watered rights. And what that does and how it complicates things moving forward, the reductions that are being asked by the Bureau, Department of Interior that's mandating all of the reductions that are coming off, and how California are junior rights holders. So there's a lot of challenges and a lot of things that are faced as far as the health of the Colorado River, what they're trying to do for the reductions to come forward with the 2026 deadlines, and how we're going to reduce, several million acre feet that we're still in shortage, that are over allocated off of the Colorado River. So, at some point, it might be entertaining just to have, if we've got space someplace on a future agenda, to invite Bill out here to just kind of give us the Colorado River 101 presentation and ask some very entertaining questions after that presentation. Because it is literally, when I go to these presentations, it's like drinking from a fire hose to learn about, they went through, and the first 15 slides was over the history of it, and dating back to, the original rights and the original structure of the agreements, and, talking all the way back to, 19, I think it was, the 1928 is where we started off with the Boulder Canyon Project Act, and then it went to the agreements and, the 30s, and then it went off to different things, and then included Mexico in part of the treaty, and it just went on and on and on and on and on. And you literally have to be a historian on some of the information to retain all this, which I think Bill Hastingcamp is. So he is definitely 100% engaged in this, and that is his knowledge base. So just kind of wanted to put that out there. There was also lengthy closed session item in discussion with those two things and some other issues that come before Met, and some agreements and some litigation that's kind of lingering out there. So all in all, it was a very long day, but I think a very productive day. And I'm really looking forward to going to conference and hearing some of the other issues and hearing some of the things that were going on. And then we did have committee meeting day for Metropolitan at Aqua. They scheduled a room for us to sit and have a talk over various issues. And, the Camp for Water process was also discussed. I had tons of discussion at the conference about that. But Pure Water was an item of discussion, and that's the recycling project that's coming up here, in LA to benefit. And I have a million questions that I'm waiting, because the way that it's kind of given to us is in pieces along the way and as they're progressing with things. But one significant piece that I just really want to make sure that we all are aware of is the $8+ billion price tag that's now being given for today's dollars from the 2018 original assessment of the project and the cost, and how it's kind of put out there that the acre foot off of this is probably closer to the $4,000 an acre foot versus what we can get off state project today for state water for $1,200 an acre foot. I mean, this is a significant price cost point difference, and we are not a direct benefit of Pure Water. And so I want to make sure that I understand what it is that benefits Western customers and where the growth is actually happening and what Pure Water actually means, what our dollar, being committed to this is, and how it's going to benefit us in some fashion when we're not a direct benefiter of this project. So I will continue to keep my finger on the pulse of that and try to ask questions to understand the relational values of what that means for us and how much ultimately this project is going to cost, and really, does it pencil out? I think my years on this board, I've proven to be the girl that is, I want the most bang for my buck, and that's how we carry it forward, and that's how we are absolutely equitable to our customers and what we do, making sure that we're advocating for the projects that are going to bring the most benefit to our region and benefit our customers in the long run, and how we keep our balanced budget in swing and not get into this outrageous pricing of projects that, is this really what it is? Because I look at storage options being a better bang for our buck, and being able to pay for state water project water at $1,200 an acre foot and planting it someplace and investing more in those types of projects, because I have a hard swallow on $4,000 an acre foot, for something that we're just not even gonna really get. It'll eventually, there's a benefit because it'll go to the service area, so that relieves some of the state water project, but again, at what cost? Is it really worth the $4,000 that was kind of floated out there?
Yeah, I think the discussion may be, is this the right project?
Right.
We need more water, there's no question about that.
Right.
But what is the smart project or projects to pursue?
Right, which goes back to Craig's comment on Camp for Water, the task force that's been formed, and how we're qualifying projects, how are the scoring of projects really coming into play, and what are we really advocating for in the long haul? Because we are the growth area. Riverside County is the growth area. I had that conversation sitting next to one of the directors that's closer to the LA area, and they said, driving back through, I made a couple of stops in your area, coming back from the Aqua Conference, and wow, you guys have some construction going on. Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea what kind of growth we're hitting. I mean, look at what the state has said, and Riverside County is the fastest growing county there is in the state. So we have a massive responsibility ahead of us coming in the next decade, and how we're going to deliver services, and how we're going to maintain our reliability, and how are we going to keep our costs down to deliver to our end users. So, it's a lot, but just want you to know I am absolutely 100% engaged in the conversation, and that's why I'm going to go to this conference and hear more about what it is. I attended. Craig has been placed on this task force as one of the general managers to talk about this Camp for Water process, and I will be in attendance at all of the meetings that I can attend to listen and continue to push our voices forward and be heard through that project, through that process, as we certainly look at, project ranking and where is this really going to go? What's the end game? How are we going to land? And how's it all going to shake out? So just a little bit of a conversation moving forward, and I'll keep you posted as we continue to go through the process.
By the Met Board?
No,
Okay.
no.
Thank God.
It's not been approved.
No.
But it's in
the hopper.
Throughout all of the planning documents as in relatively different forms of acceptance that it's going to be built. And that's one of the big problems that we're trying to deal with in camp, is that some people assume that it's going to be built, and some people are saying, we have not made that decision yet.
Okay.
And Metropolitan only has so much bonding capacity to build giant projects.
Right.
And so, as Director Denstead said, if you only have so much capacity to build billion-dollar projects, is this the best billion-dollar project or not?
Maybe not.
Right.
A lot of discussion.
Wow.
No, a lot of discussion, and this coming forward with, the governor's declaration over this fast tracking and everything else too. Is this the project that we need to do? Because, I continue to ask Craig, this is only going to produce 155,000 acre feet off of this project. So really, what are we talking about? I mean, is this really the benefit? And as we move through, it's a recycled project. So as we move through and we ask all of our customers to continue to conserve, and less inflow is going into a plant like that, at what point do we talk about, is this potentially a stranded asset? And maybe that's crazy thinking, but we already have legislation that's passed that's already mandated gallons per day per person that is already moving forward. It's already moving forward. And how much are we in jeopardy of looking at that if the brilliance of the state legislature decides to make mandates even more that restrict that even further? So just, putting out there, there's a lot in the hopper right now, and there's a lot being talked about. So will continue.
Okay, other questions for Director Denstedt? Okay, brings us to Chino Basin Water Master. They did meet. As you know, they are in the process of replacing their executive director. There will be a recruitment. The number 2 person, Edgar Tejas Foster, has accepted the position as acting general manager. During the course of the recruitment, he may, if he decides to, apply for the general manager position. We'll see what he decides to do in that regard. Business items from the last meeting. Every 5 years, the court essentially reappoints the 9-member Water Master Board or something different, if in the wisdom of the court they should do that. There was quite a bit of discussion about whether the Water Master Board should recommend to the court that it reappoint the 9-member board. This is not the people on the board, it's the 9 positions that different people fill. And should it be for 5 years, or should there be some other recommendation? Amongst the appropriative pool, there are members who have concerns that they are paying what they consider more than their fair share. The way Water Master is funded is essentially, the vast majority of it is a fee on water that is pumped from the basin. And who pumps from the basin? Well, the appropriators. So they have some interest in a somewhat different structure. They didn't have anything specific to propose. There was a motion made that did receive a second to recommend the court appoint the 9-member board or reappoint the 9-member board for 1 year, during which time everybody would, in theory, get together and come to some sort of consensus on what should the Water Master structure look like. A substitute motion was made, and it did pass, to have Water Master recommend to the court that they reappoint the 9-member board for a 5-year period. So that's where that is. We'll continue to see, I think, some discussion of what the concerns are and how they might be resolved. But at this point, the board has not been educated on specifics of what the concerns are or how those with the concerns would propose that they be addressed. So it's just, there's a ruckus in the background, but we don't really know exactly what it is or what anybody would like us to do about it. So hopefully we'll get that resolved. They did approve the fiscal year 23-24 assessment package, which is the allocation of the costs of Water Master based on how much gets pumped. So all of that was approved. And then there's a replenishment and administrative assessment, a little esoteric, but that was also approved. Their HR firm, the person who's doing all the work for Water Master has left that firm and started their own. So an action was taken to move the contract from the old firm to the new firm to stay with the same person. And the last thing was, again, administrative upgrades or changes to the employee manual to comply with new state legislation. And that's it for Water Master. CDA?
I reported last time.
Yeah,
And
okay,
there won't
so
be
nothing
another
new.
meeting until early January.
And I think everybody in the room knows CDA, Chino de Salter Authority. RCRA.
RCRA was changed due to Aqua, so we will meet next week.
Okay. WRCOG.
Thank you. Yes, WRCOG, we did have a closed session at the very beginning of WRCOG to talk about lingering litigation for PACE. So I think we're close to the tail end of finishing all of those. I always know that when Scott Difford shows up in the room, where we're at with that and what we're going to talk about. So it's, so there was no reportable action from the closed session. Did talk about was the climate pollution reduction grant funding opportunities. So I'm sure we've got a government affairs officer here that's keeping his finger on the pulse if there's something that we can jump on board in terms of the requirements for the no emission vehicles and different things. They're looking at those type of opportunities. So if we need to get dialed in and we haven't already on something like that, there might be an opportunity for us to be able to jump on the bandwagon of funding for that. And then lastly, we have next executive meeting is going to be scheduled here at Western. There is a strategic plan that will be talking about doing the session, and it's scheduled here at Western's building. We've, again, offered our ability to be able to service this as a member agency since we have some nice meeting facilities here. That's going to be on Friday, January the 12th at 10 a.m. And if there's anything that you'd like to add into the hopper or you want to attend this meeting, obviously you're welcome to do that, but it is a strategic plan looking forward for our 24 year and what WRCOG should be focusing on and how we want to move through with our strategic planning. So you are certainly welcome to add your comments into that and their focus moving forward with that. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Sarat.
We will meet next week.
Okay. Aqua Region 9.
Aqua Region 9, we did have a board meeting that was held down at Aqua. And I think there were several folks that were in the attendance at that. But one of the things that I think we got the best feedback ever was we did a survey that was live, and we had everybody go onto their phones and download their little process, and we asked several questions about engagement. We asked about communication. We asked about value. We asked about what you would like to see. We asked about future tours for the program and wanted to get direct feedback that everybody could see, and it was really transparent. I don't know what the take was of folks in the room and what you guys thought of that. I'll go through it, yeah. You know, I mean, we got some really positive feedback after the session that they thought that that was really exciting and interesting to watch and see the various different ideas that just came and flew out on the board in terms of stuff. I think wine tasting came up on one of them. People wanted to go out to the people wanted to go out to the wineries and see the ag portion of that and stick around for a little wine tasting. So we'll look into those opportunities. But there are significant agricultural advancements that have really taken place. I know that I've gone to a couple out there. I know Wilson Creek Winery, who obviously Bill Wilson, who sits on Rancho California Water Districts Board, he has got a manager out there who is doing some very interesting things. I think he's a biologist by trade and has his degree in that. And some of the technology that they're putting out there in the vineyards and trying to conserve water and produce their crop and have more value out of it. It's very interesting to sit and listen to the processes that they go through and the test value that they do over certain fields and things that they put out there. So just kind of interesting to have engagement, because that's really what we wanted. We wanted people to really feel like they were getting the most value out of attendance and what we could offer as a program, as a region. And I think one of the biggest things that we got was the program that was put together by Patrick O'Dowd down from Salton Sea Authority and the Salton Sea Tour that took place this last year. I think out of all of the regions, that was the one that got the biggest praise out of all of the regions from Aqua leadership in attendance. So we were super excited to be the leaders in that. And thank Patrick O'Dowd for all of his setting up, the hard work that he put into that tour and making it a huge success. He is stepping into the leadership role. He will be chair starting next year, and Carol Lee Gonzalez Brady will be the vice chair from Rancho California Water District. She will be the vice chair for Region 9. So there we go.
Okay. Director Risby.
Director's comment?
Oh, yeah.
No, yeah,
I'm sorry.
no.
But, getting behind here. It is now time for director's comments. And,
President Gardner?
yes,
As Attorney Ballinger reminded, there does need to be a report out on the Aqua Conference by the staff, by the board members who attended.
yes. And that will be coming up. We are going to turn now to director's comments, and we'll start with Director Denstedt and work this way.
No, for sure. So the Aqua Conference, if you guys weren't at the session that they reported, there were almost 1,900 attendees. So it was very well attended. There were some really great sessions that I heard. I know that we had presenters at some of the sessions. I didn't unfortunately get to go to any of those sessions. This was the strangest Aqua Conference ever for me in terms of I've never had so many side meetings scheduled at a conference before ever. And most of it had to do with what's going on at Metropolitan, what's happening with this Camp for Water process, what are you guys doing about Sykes Reservoir and Delta Conveyance, and those probably were the big three that I was asked. I know that Craig and I attended a meeting, and those were the questions that were asked, like what is our involvement? What are you doing at Met? What are all the things? And then, of course, I had the committee meeting, and we also had caucus meeting there. We had a scheduled caucus meeting where all of the caucus from the Inland Empire for Metropolitan also, so we had a special meeting that was scheduled, and we got a side conference room for that. So all in all, it was a very interesting conference for me, and some of the connections and some of the interfacing that I got was probably way more valuable to get some insights, to get some advocation, to get some, hey, we really want to support you with this, and what can we do to do that, which is just a huge benefit to our agency. So I just, I want to thank staff too for the support, and thank Craig for setting up the meetings that he did, and your attendance at those meetings, and continuing to support me in advocating for us. So thank you for that. Okay?
Thank you. Director Risby.
I did not attend Aqua due to family plans, so I
Do you
missed
have
out.
anything else?
No. I
Okay.
think I'm good.
Director Torres.
Thank you so much. Okay, just a couple of things. Yes, I attended Aqua, and I mean, it was actually really great to have it here and then have it in the desert. I have a lot of friends out there I don't get to see often, so I took the opportunity to do so. Some of my takeaways was one, I attended the communications meeting where Sarah spoke in that panel. It was short-lived for me, but it was, like Craig said, very, very well done. You all know that that's in my heart, is just better communication to the public. I watched, I think the most impactful speaker was the keynote, Yana Garcia with Cal EPA. She was just amazing. And then my focus, or the things that I focused on attending, had a lot to do with workforce development, and then the ag solutions presentation was very eye-opening, talking about retiring farmlands for solar, and but really, I think what I got most out of it is just how we're kind of being pushed into those directions. And it was actually a lot more heartbreaking than anything to see people being forced into those directions in order to one, for sustainability, but really, kind of what else are we going to do with this land? And so I think that's why California Water for All is so incredibly important, because it's going to provide solutions that don't have to do with, basically ending your lifelong career and livelihood, essentially, just for sustainability purposes. And then, we had a great time as a agency at dinner, and I want to thank everyone that put it together, and just in general, Western's, like Director Dunstad usually says, but just what Western's presence at the, I was also here in the Inland Empire, but is very well felt. I wasn't able to attend to the California Water for All lunch, but I heard great things, and I heard a ton of people were excited about it, and yeah, it was a great conference, and I'm really glad I was able to be there, especially for the things that those things that I mentioned were important to me to see. And then just some other updates. I'm participating in what we call Tour of Toys, so December 21st and 22nd. The Hoop Bus, you can find them on Instagram. It's a bus that has a basketball hoop at the end. We'll be touring the Inland Empire. We'll be giving away toys to the children. The 22nd is a stop here in Riverside County, so there are plenty of places if you know kids that are in need or your own family members, bring them by. There's plenty of toys. There's Santa Claus that can dunk. Just a lot of fun things. So the Grinch too, actually. So come along. And I had another update in my head, but that's basically it. So thank you.
Okay. Director Roden.
Okay, I didn't realize my mic was still on. So in addition to the regular Aqua conference, I attended the JPIA, Aqua JPIA meeting on Monday and Tuesday. And I went to the executive committee meeting and then the board of directors meeting. And then there was a Aqua reception, which was really dinner. And so it was real, they had a lot of food there, which was nice. And I just wanted to mention a couple of things from, because that board meeting is really long. It's like 3 hours. In fact, I think it ran over. So they cover a lot of ground, but I did want to just mention a couple of things from the, let me see, the executive board meeting, the executive committee meeting, which was first. One of the things I wanted to mention is they created the Walter Andy Sells Risk Management Award. Andy retired, I think it was at the end of last year. And the committee had discussed a way to honor him and all the service that he had given. So they have recommended that they approve adding that award. And they'll sponsor it, it'll be advertised for future conferences. And the next step is they had a discussion about establishing what the criteria would be. So I guess at this point, they've decided on the award, but they'll be fine tuning the criteria, the application process, et cetera. We had a cyber risk management update, which I don't know, that topic just fascinates me because I think it's so up and coming, and then with AI and all of that. They mentioned a company that is working with Aqua JPIA called KYND, K-Y-N-D, and I'm going to leave it at that for the moment because the following day I attended a presentation from them. So after the executive committee meeting, then lunch, there's the board of directors meeting. And I wanted to mention, I hope I turned this to the right page. My gosh, we had. Oh, so Western, it was really fun to go through all these different awards that had been given. And so I wanted to recognize Leadership Essentials for the Water Industry Program. This is the 23-24 Southern California cohort. We had James Chatwin, Safety Officer from Western, was recognized there, and I hope I'm not going to leave anyone out. We also had Employee Benefits Program Wellness Grant Awards. Western, as a district, was one of those awardees. And wait, there's more. The HR LaBounty Safety Award winners, okay, I mentioned James Chatwin, but also Chris Golden. And they asked for people representing their districts to stand, so I was able to proudly stand on their behalf. And then there was the Liability Program President's Award, again, Western Municipal Water District, which was really awesome. And then Property Program President's Awards, Western Municipal Water District. I'm really feeling like we're really overachievers, but I love it. I love it. So,
It's a good place to overachieve.
yeah, it is. Well, and I love that they recognize all of that. So there was a ton more. If anyone has any specific questions, I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards, but otherwise you could probably stay here all day. Actually, so the following, that was all on Monday, then the following morning, there were two educational programs, I guess you would call them, and the first one was KYND, Building a Resilient Front Against Cyber Attacks. And we should, if we haven't already, we should be hearing from JPIA about what KIND is offering. And if I understood it correctly, it's already included in whatever it is that we pay for JPIA. It's not like a separate thing that you have to choose. And what was really interesting and piqued my curiosity with this company was that, I'm trying to find the term they used, they are looking at the agencies from the outside. So it's not like a forensic audit. They don't ask a lot of invasive questions or things that we might consider confidential. There's apparently certain things that they can look at from the outside, and then they'll rate you red light, yellow light, green light, with the idea that if you have any red light issues, those are the ones that you might want to tackle first. It's nothing that's required. They're not coming in and trying to tell you how to run your business. It seemed very user-friendly and positive and not heavy-handed at all. So that was interesting. And of course, my mind just works in such weird ways. But I had to ask the question, and it happened to be the last question of the program. I said, so what does KIND stand for? Because it's capital letters, KYND. I figure it's either an acronym, or every time I read it, I kept thinking of kindness, and it's like, he said, well, we're a unique type, so a unique kind of cybersecurity tool. And he said, the Y doesn't mean anything. I was thinking, oh, you guys need some marketing here. Someone needs to take this and make it even more clever. But anyway, so that was very interesting. I did not attend the second program, which was Risk and Insurance Challenges in the Wildland-Urban Interface. But at Aqua, I did attend one of the roundtables on the fires and what were learned from the fires in Northern California. So that was JPIA basically, and Craig, I'll probably follow up with some more detailed just questions that came up as I was listening to them speak. But it's a lot. Somebody said drinking from a fire hose. Oh, Brenda, I think you said it. And there's a lot of information there. So, and then as far as Aqua, I just love this conference. It is. Sometimes conferences get a bad rap, like they're just fun and games, they're just fluffy and all the. This is such an educational piece, and the networking and getting to know people from other agencies and how they're doing things and learning from them, and they can learn from us. And so overall, it's just incredible, I think. So let me look on, I did attend the keynote speaker on Tuesday morning, and yes, I thought she was very good, very informative. I wasn't able to attend the lunch speaker because we had California Water for All, which I thought was, it was like, okay, got to do that. Got to do California Water for All. So I did. I attend the Regional Issue Forum before the fire, lessons learned on wildfire preparedness from California's Nevada region. So it was up, toward Northern California. And at these conferences, I always run into my friend Larry McKinney, who used to be the legal counsel for SAPA and for Oh Wow. And he is now managing a water district in, I believe it's Amador, I think is the district that he's working for. So I just, you can't miss him. He always wears this very distinguished top hat. And so he was in this presentation, and they had their, and now I'm going to goof it up. I think she's their Congress. No, she's their state senator, I believe. She was actually in this panel, and she was very interesting and very heartfelt, down to earth. She was about people, which I just love, and so that it was interesting. Anyway, all of these were. I did do the California Water for All luncheon. Came away with thank you, Sarah, for the little postcards that I can share with people. I appreciated that. And let's see, I went to the policy forum on Colorado River 101, How Did We Get Here? And it reminded me, Brenda, of some of what you were hearing with the timeline. That whole first session was like just a historic timeline of this year was this, and this year I was scribbling as fast as I could, and this year was that, and there is so much history involved, and I don't think the general public really realizes the history of water. It's just as fascinating. So, and I wanted to go to that agriculture one, Gracie. That's probably the one you went to, California Agriculture, Food Supply, and National Security. Apparently it was recorded. So Tammy, I have a note to check with you to find out how we can get the recordings of some of the ones we weren't able to attend. Region 9, I went to that meeting, and then on Thursday, too much of a good thing, what 2023 taught us about flood, and that's one I'm going to follow back with you, Craig, because sometimes when I go to these, they ask questions that I don't have the experience to answer, but I will tell you a little reminder that I got from this session. Know your audience, because I came in and they have literally round tables. I sat down. I didn't really, I guess I made assumptions as to who was at the place there. And something came up about the water that I brought up. The water running out from under the Golden Gate Bridge. And I got these turned heads. Well, it needs to run under the Golden Gate. I'm like, well, yes, yes, it does. But I thought, God, Laura, haven't you learned after all these years? I'm like, Southern California, Northern California. So it was a little humorous, and I think I backed my way out of it pretty quickly. But I'm like, man, I have to know my audience better. And then I would have to say the highlight for me as far as the sessions was the roundtable talk that was, are you ready for making conservation a California way of life? It was 1 hour filled to the brim with great information and what's going on with that and what the process is going to be and how they're working with the agencies. And it was just, I told Melissa that I sat, the facilitator at our table, she happens to be working on data for that whole project. And she mentioned working with you, Melissa, and how much she just thought you were incredible, which you are. And I didn't get it. She ran out of cards, and I gave her mine, and I can't remember her name, but I think it starts with a D. might have been Diane, but don't quote me. She says, well, I saw you writing a lot of notes. I was like, yes, and I didn't tell her. Some of them were out of frustration and not at her, but about the process. And then others were, oh, I need to find out about this. I need to. So anyway, very valuable. I will be definitely learning more about that because I want to be able to talk to the public about it. I want to be able in conversations at chamber or at a city event or whatever it is to share that information with them because they don't know what's coming. You know, they don't. And so that's important. The closing networking lunch, I did not attend, but I liked how they flipped the schedule around and they did the keynote and awards before lunch and then went right into lunch, and everybody, instead of people leaving, I think more people stayed with the way that they did that. So I thought that was a good change. And the speaker that we were supposed to have wasn't able to attend. I think she was sick. I think it was a she. So they had, is it Dave Egerton? And the gentleman that was retiring, which I didn't remember his name, was his... He had been with them for like 30 years. They did just a Q&A, and it reminded me of a WRCOG event. I thought it was of that caliber with the interview that those two did, and I thought, you know, I'm sorry we missed the other speaker, but how valuable was that? So it was very good. So that's it. Sorry, I kind of went on, but yeah, there was a lot there, and just want to stress how I know it helps me as a board member, but even just learning about water in general and then being able to be there with some of our staff members and interacting with them on a different kind of basis is really fun. So
Yeah, and to your comment, yes, when Dave got up there, that was completely impromptu.
Yes.
They just threw it up there because they scrambled and had to figure out how to deal with it, and
it was perfect.
Yeah, so he did an outstanding job.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. And we got to hear from the gentleman that was retiring. And for those of us that are still new to all this, it was nice to hear all of those and his wisdom.
Yes.
And his background, even
Yes.
before he was in water.
Yes.
So, yeah, it was good.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just a couple of things from me. I did not attend Aqua, so we'll save that piece. A sad thing, several of us knew Kelly Rowe, a director at Orange County Water District, and their representative to SAPA numerous times. Kelly passed away a week and a half ago. If you have to go, he did it the right way, he just didn't wake up. So, and I saw him the day before, and he was completely normal, healthy, so a real shock, and I will, when we come back from closed session, adjourn the meeting, adjourn in his honor and memory. Nobody, surprisingly, nobody has mentioned that we have an employee recognition event tomorrow, and I will see you all there. Yeah, I'm not sure, is Kevin going to be back from vacation? Can we have an employee recognition event without Kevin?
I asked him, and he said it would be okay if we went forward.
So, see everybody there. That's always a fun event and a time for us to catch up and talk to people that we don't get to see as frequently. And then I have an issue that we need to deal with. It came to my attention that there is an FPPC complaint against Director Torres, and it was filed it was open November 2nd. The FPPC does not put those things on its website until a minimum of 2 days after an electronic notice, an email, is made, or 5 days after a U.S. mail notice has been mailed. and we have not been notified as required by our regulations that an investigation is there. I don't know why that is, and
If I'm able to, an
no.
investigation has not officially been started, which is why I'm still waiting on notification if whether or not they're going to actually investigate. So.
website says there's an open, active investigation.
Maybe I can, that's
Well,
my
hold
misunderstanding.
on,
but-
hold on, please.
Oh, I just want to,
Yeah, no, and I'm not
I'm being
leaping
taken by
to any
surprise right now.
conclusions, but in light of the issue we recently had with another director and my cautioning all of us that if there's an investigation, we are required to
absolutely.
notify the president and the general counsel. So rather than hash this out in front of the board now, what I am going to do is appoint a committee of 2 board members to work with Director Torres to figure out what has happened, why was notice not given. We are not going to look into what the actual complaint is, what it says. I don't know. I don't think anybody, I don't know if Director Torres knows, but that's not something that will be analyzed by Western. It will be analyzed by the Fair Political Practices Commission. They will make a ruling, whatever it is. Once they do that, depending on what their ruling is, our board will look at, do we do anything or do we not do anything? But we are not going to get into that, any particulars of that case. That's not our role. So I'm going to ask Director Roten and Director Rizvi to serve as a committee that will work with Director Torres, just to analyze what happened and bring a report back to the board. And you will have, there's a section of our regulations that describes that process. You will have available to you both the general manager's office and the general counsel's office to guide all of you just in that process. And I would ask that you do that as expeditiously as you reasonably can, and just bring a report back to the board, and we'll proceed from there based on the report. So, and that's it for me. We do have a closed session. Well, we have information items in the package. Everybody, if you have questions about those, see the appropriate staff folks. We do have a closed session. I'll turn it over to Mr. Ballinger to make that announcement.
Yes, the board will be discussing the one item of existing litigation that's listed on the agenda, and we'll be convening back into open session. I don't anticipate any reportable action, but we will be reconvening out here to make a report.
Okay, and again, at that time, when we adjourn the meeting, it will be in honor and memory of Director Kelly Rowe. So, how long do we need? Let's take, well, let's. Okay, let's go real quick and just get done.
They'll land on like a
on the
recurring-
other side.
The
The
red walk
car-
is gonna drive from.
Oh,
It's too big to run one. So I was getting the second one, and they all left, and I peeled back so that like, I wouldn't be by myself anymore.
All right, we have returned from closed session, and Mr. Ballinger, will you let us know if there's anything reportable?
There is nothing reportable. The board met to discuss the one item that is listed on the agenda, and there is no reportable action.
Okay, in that case, I will adjourn today's meeting in honor and memory of Director Kelly Rowe of Orange County Water District and our friend from SAWPA. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Got that because